And I'm going to turn my volume on here so I can hear. Hello, everybody. I think we're live. I don't see anybody in the chat right now, so I'm talking to nobody except YouTube. Turn my volume on here so I can hear. Hello, everybody. I think could the two of you talk a little bit? I don't see anybody in the chat.
Hello.
I'm talking to nobody except YouTube.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello, everybody.
Whatever time it is.
Could the two of you talk a little bit?
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay. Yeah, you both sound pretty good actually in there. I had somebody else that I was on here with, and they were using their microphone in in their laptop, so they were very hollow.
Yeah.
And very tinny.
Yep.
But that's okay. So, here's the basic rundown. Oh, you're hosting me. Look at that. This is a playtest of the chase and vehicle chase and combat rules for CAPERS. Specifically, this is technically part of what I hope will be a second supplement. CAPERS Noir is in the works. That's written. It doesn't have chase kind of stuff into it, but that's set in the 40s. The next one is CAPERS Covert, which is set in the 60s and has a super spy, super villain kind of feel to it. And of course, what's a James Bond story without a good car chase? So the idea is to have vehicle chases that can be part of that. And then I'll do like a PDF of like, well, here's what cars are in the 40s, and here's what cars are like in the 20s, and you can have the stats. But then have the rules in Covert. That's the hope, anyway. So this is like, and this is also something that will probably make its way into my another game that I'm kind of just starting to tinker with that will need vehicle stuff kind of going on. So that's the basic for that. We'll see how everything pans out. I just, I've got plenty of time to kind of get this figured out. So I'm here with Brooke and Chris, who are respectively, they've got their Discord handles underneath them on the screen there, so if you're in the Discord, you know who they are. And they volunteered to help me try this out and see how much this sucks, and whether it needs to be completely redesigned, because this is technically the second time around with this, because I put together something several months ago, and then we tried it out with some people and said, wow, that's overly complicated. And so it got slimmed down and tweaked quite a bit to not be so complicated. The system basically works. Brooke, to kind of get you up to speed a little bit, you watched the Little Red Dot Twitch game.
Correct.
Basically, you've got characters who have 6 traits, and each of those traits is rated 1 to 3. Sometimes they're rated higher if you have a superpower that gets you there. And then you also have skills. And so that rating of that trait, whenever you're going to attempt something, that rating is what that's how many cards you have. It's called your card count in the game. It's how many cards you can flip maximum. And it goes up by 1 if you have a skill that's appropriate. So, for example, shooting, if you had shooting a gun, if you had an agility of 2 and the gun skill, then that 2 goes up to a 3, and you have up to 3 cards that you can flip to attempt to shoot somebody. And when you make your check, you flip 1 card at a time. And each time you decide whether you're going to stick with that card or use a different flip the next card. When you flip the card, the pip value of the card determines success or failure. So 2, 3, 4, all the way up to ace high is success versus failure, and the suit determines the degree of success or failure. With clubs always being the worst, going alphabetically up to spades, which is always the best suit. So you could conceivably flip a king of clubs, and a king is very, very good because it's very high, but it's clubs, so it's the worst suit. It's going to come with a complication. You could say, I'm going to stick with that complication and take the success, or you could flip another card and potentially get a high card with a better suit, or potentially fail in the process. And once you want to stop, you stick with that card. If you go through your entire card count, you have to stick with the last card, although you can spend Moxie to get an additional card. Each of your characters starts with 3 Moxie. And you can use Moxie for a number of other things we can talk about as those things come up. Basically, your character has a body score. That's the target score to hit them. So it's going to be a number between 2 and 10, or a jack, queen, king, or an ace. You'll have a mind score. That's your the score, that the card flip that is needed to affect you mentally with any sort of mental power. You have a hits total. That's how much punishment you can take. You've got Moxie we talked about, and you've got a speed. You'll see that with your weapons, they range in damage starting like kind of they might say color or suit, and there might be a plus a number. And if you look at your character, or if you're looking at the character sheet, you see down in is it the lower left?
It's in the middle.
Lower middle. Right. There's a rundown of the 2 colors. Red is 1, black is 2, and then there's a rundown of the suits with a 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how much damage you deal based on whether it's color or suit. And typically, the more lethal weapons like guns do suit damage, and sometimes suit +1 or +2. So you just add on to that. And then things like knives and less lethal weapons, punches and so forth, do color damage. So they're effectively like D2s or D4s, basically. And that's, again, always tied into the card flip. You don't roll damage after, you don't flip damage afterwards. It's part of that flip that determines success or failure. But I'll answer questions as we go. Chris, you know your way around your characters and the powers and everything. Brooke, you're playing Marie, who her power is Puppeteer, and that power works. That power can be ranked 1 to 5, just like your traits can be. And that number, I think, for her is 4.
Correct.
And that means that she has, when she wants to puppeteer something, when she wants to perform telekinesis, she has up to 4 cards. She has a card count of 4 to attempt to, because she's targeting something, so she actually has to make flips to kind of grab it with her power. And then she can do the thing, she can move it around with her power. And then every power also has boosts listed underneath it. And boosts are things that make the power more powerful, or make it more versatile, or sometimes do related things. For example, Chris's character has concussion beam power, and one of the boosts is the jump boost, I believe, which is where he can shoot his concussion beams at the ground and propel himself in like a super jump, as opposed to punching somebody with concussion beams. He's using it to propel himself, so it's like a related thing. And you'll see the puppeteer or Marie has a few boosts listed there that she can do, and I'll answer questions as we go. This playtest is going to be very slim on story. This is to be testing out the mechanics. So basically, I'm going to be running. I'm the GM. I'll be running multiple characters, including one of whom is a driver. And you will be running 1 vehicle's worth of characters. Chris is you're playing. You've got the driver for that vehicle, and you've got Colm, who is an Irish boxer with concussion beams, and Brooke is playing Marie Laurent, who is a French immigrant who can manipulate things. Her nickname is Marionette. That's and then I've got some characters I'm going to stuff into a car and shoot at you with. So I think, Chris, we're going to give you the sport car.
Okay.
Again, like I said, we're kind of testing the 60s version of this game, so this is going to be like kind of a fancy convertible, or something flashy, something like 1960 something Corvette or something like that. And we're going to
muscle.
Yeah, like something really slick and fast. Looking at the vehicle information, you'll see that each vehicle has what I'm referring to right now is chase hits, chase damage, and a maneuver score. And that's just to keep them the chase hits work similarly to your character hits. That's like how much punishment or how much how much you can mess with the vehicle until it effectively is out of the chase. So that's got that many hits. If If you are being pursued and you run out of hits, then they catch you. If you run out of chase hits. If you are doing the chasing and you run out of hits first, then the other car gets away. You crash or you peel out or the car breaks down or they lose you or whatever. It's all very narrative oriented. It's not specifically damage to the car. It could be simply, turning a couple of corners real quick and not getting caught, and they lose you. Chase damage works just like damage for weapons, but it only applies to chase hits. So it's all based on suit, sometimes with a modifier. And then maneuver is a number that reflects sort of how maneuverable your vehicle is. The higher the better. And the maneuver ability, the maneuver score comes into play if you want to attempt a stunt, which is when you make your chase check, your driving check, you can choose to be to attempt something particularly fantastic and wonderful, and it will deal more chase hits damage, potentially end the chase faster. But in the process, you lose 2 cards from your card count in the offset of adding that additional chase damage. Oh, and for the record, I didn't mention for the boosts for the character Brooke. The boosts, every time you can use up to 3 boosts on your turn. You can use each one only once, but up to 3 total. And each one that you use reduces your card count for whatever it is you're trying to do that turn by 1. So if you are using your puppeteer power at 4 and you want to use 2 boosts, now you've only got 2 cards.
Unless I use a Moxie point.
Unless you use a Moxie point to get an extra one. And there's no reason to use the Moxie point until you've gone through your card count to see if you can get what you need.
So that's not like
you can do it at the end.
A fate point in like Shadowrun where you would have to declare it beforehand?
No, you have to declare the boosts that you're using right away because it's going to affect your check, and sometimes it could affect your movement because certain boosts do things with movement.
Right.
But you don't have to spend your Moxie until you need it. So you can go through your card count and get to that last card and go, that sucks, and then elect to take that failure or that marginal success, or go ahead and spend a Moxie. But Moxie is once per turn. You can't just start churning through your Moxie. You still only get 1 more. Hey, Chris, Does that sound like how you've been playing it?
For the most part, there are a couple ways I haven't been playing it.
That's okay. So everybody makes the game their own.
It's nice to have just kind of like a broad overview of things.
The rules as they were intended?
Yes.
Yeah, but here's the beautiful things. You bought the game. It's yours now. I don't give a crap how you play it. Play it however makes sense. But I did want to be clear for the playtest. Now, for the driving thing, before we get into it, driving is a subsystem, or the chase rules are a subsystem that use the playing cards. But what happens is when you are going to set up initiative order, each driver, instead of flipping 1 card for initiative, and we'll deal with that when we get to initiative, the driver draws 3 cards and makes a hand. That's your driving hand. And you get to bid one of those cards, which is to say I'm going to use this card without revealing it. All the drivers flip their cards at the same time, and whoever bid the highest card goes first. Whoever bid the lowest card goes last in the round, and everybody else goes in the middle, which for the purposes of the game, the middle is between 9 and 10. So the idea is that, here, let me stack this on top there. So the high bid goes first. But the bid card also determines the target score for the driving check you're about to make. So if you bid a king, you need a king or better on your driving check to succeed. And you're going to be flipping regular cards for that. So you're gambling that, like, if you want to definitely go first, you want to bid one of those high cards, now you're gambling that you're going to hit one of those, you're going to be able to flip a high card on your check. If you bid low and you go and you say, I'm fine, I'll go last, I'll bid a 4. Well, now your target score is a 4. You're almost certainly going to get a 4 if you've got a couple of cards to flip on your check. So you're going to be able to do some damage, but it's not going to happen until the end of the round. So if you want to be able to get the damage in, the chase damage in early, you have to hit, you have to bid higher. Or just higher than the other person. And in this case, there's only 2 drivers, so a 7 could be the high card. And then I think that's. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to cover on that. The driving check. Oh yeah, when you bid that card, and I hope everybody kept that in front of them. You've got a list of the driving check types based on suit. When you bid your card, you're bidding where you're going to go in initiative, what your target score is going to be, and also the type of check you're going to make. And if you bid clubs, you're going to be making an expertise conveyances check to exploit a weakness in your opponent. If it's diamonds, you're going to make a charisma deception check to taunt them. If it's hearts, you're making a perception sense check to use your terrain as an advantage somehow. And if it's spades, you're making an agility conveyances check that's just maneuvering your vehicle. Now, you don't have to use that suit. You can choose to use a different, like if you flip hearts and your character isn't terribly good at perception, and you'd rather make a driving check, you can say, I'm not going to do hearts, I'll instead do spades. And it decreases the card count for your check by 1. So it makes it a little harder for you to do it. So you can always default to the thing you're best at, but whenever you're defaulting into the best thing, you're always going to have a little less chance to do it. Make sense?
I think so.
And technically, you can use any trait check that you can think of, anything narratively that fits the situation. You can, instead of using one of those 4 that are tied to the suits, you could come up with something else and say, well, hey, I want to do this. Would that be a blah, blah, blah check? And you'd say, yeah, sure, that makes sense for the chase. And then that just becomes, an opt-out where you lose 1 out of your card count. You reduce your card count by 1. So you don't have to be making, quote-unquote, driving checks, that is to say agility conveyances checks. Brooke, for the clarification, that the checks are always called out as the trait and the skill.
Perfect.
So like expertise conveyances is like, expertise is your smarts, conveyances is all about your vehicles. Is basically the vehicle skill. So you're exploiting weakness by what you know about vehicles.
Cool.
Not necessarily a perfect system, but it used to be a lot more complex than that, so we'll give this one a shot.
It's not. Doesn't seem overly complicated.
And the weird thing, the thing that will happen is that when we get to every round, normally you set up your initiative order and it stays, unless people decide they're going to do stuff different and change, they want to delay their action or that sort of thing. But with drivers, the drivers will change, the driver orders will change from round to round. You'll be bidding cards all the time.
Gotcha.
And that's like that. The intention there is that that's a reaction to the terrain constantly changing. So
I like that.
Because and that way, without having to put a map down, you can narrate the idea that the terrain is constantly doing something. So if you went last time and you go first as a driver this time, you can narrate as part of your action how the road in front of you suddenly, cleared out. And that allowed you to get out in front and react more quickly to things, or whatever, something like that. Without mapping it, that's I think everything. If I missed anything, we'll come back to it. So the driver initiative order will change every turn. The bid cards. If you pull the black joker in your bid hand, in your driver hand, that takes up space. Nothing bad happens to you, but it takes up space, which is to say you only have 2 cards to choose from to bid now. You can spend a moxie to discard it, to open your hand back up to 3 cards. If you get the good joker, you bid that. It's the highest card. It's considered the highest card, so you will go first. And when it becomes your turn, you will automatically succeed in whatever it was you're trying to do. You will deal your suit damage as if there was a boon, as if it was spades with which is a boon. And then you'll get another action, and that can generally turn into now I'm going to shoot or use a power or something like that. So it's the good joker works much the same way as the good joker normally. You succeed, you do really well, and you get another action. And Brooke, you'll need to identify in your deck, since you may not realize this. There's 2 jokers in there. One of them
Right.
needs to be the good Joker, and one of them needs to be the bad Joker.
Well, they're black and colored, so I will.
Then, if they're black and colored, spades is always good in the in the Capers deck. This thing right here, red is the bad Joker has like bullet holes and blood all over the place, so it's extra red. So we'll go with black is the good Joker, colored is the bad Joker.
Perfect. That works for me.
Okie dokie. Is one of you guys in the chat?
I have.
Or, sorry, in the Twitch. I mean, does one of you actually have the Twitch up?
I can open it real quick.
You don't have to. I'm just asking if you do. I'm curious if there's somebody in the chat.
Oh.
Or if there's somebody in the Twitch, because I'm seeing 2 people in the Twitch. I know I'm
yes.
one of them.
I opened it, yes.
Okay.
I'm one of them too.
Oh, so maybe I don't identify as one of them because
I don't think you count. You're
count.
technically on the viewer list, but you're not. You don't. I don't think you count.
Okay.
I was like, where did the window go? I know I moved it to my 40 some odd inch TV.
So okay, we're good. So real basic, we're gonna have a chase. I'm gonna say the bad guys are chasing you, or well, you're gangsters, so we're all bad guys, right? We're gonna say that you're up against some rival gangsters, and they're your foes, and they're chasing you. The assumption in a chase is that the vehicles are traveling at roughly the same speed, and that terrain and obstacles and people and all that kind of stuff keeps one of them from just clearly getting out in front of the other, and having there be no chase. And if you get into a situation where it's like, oh, you guys jump into a sports car, and everybody that's chasing you jumps into a semi, guess what? You get away. We don't run that chase. But if the vehicles are all kind of relatively close, then the assumption is that we're not going to get too much into miles per hour and whether or not somebody can get out in front of people. It's usually kind of like the assumption is the chase is happening relatively close to one another. Occasionally, you might describe it as the chase is lengthened, like the cars are a little farther apart, which might come into play for ranges on weapons and the like. But for the time being, unless that comes up, assume that you're within about 30 feet of the other vehicle. And just constantly shifting location. One's ahead, one's behind, you turn. One pulls a hairpin turn, the other one turns around and follows them, all that stuff. We're going to have everybody, for every character we need initiative, and that is in the game called a reaction check, which instead of being the multiple card flipping thing, you flip one card and you add your character's agility score plus 1 if you have the sense skill.
Fantastic.
And then I have to make my driver hand.
Well, that's cool. I flipped over a king, and I get +3.
So you're at like ace +2. Okay, so you're at ace +2. Chris, what's your character non-driver at? The non-driver, Colm.
Colm got a6.
So Colm's going way down here.
6 of clubs.
Marie's going way up at the top, although the top driver will go before you. My bad guy is going there. And Chris, you and I need to bid a card. This is the one I'm bidding. And flip. 9, so I go first.
Yep.
Chris goes last. Discard that card.
Okay.
Draw one more card into your hand immediately so that you're always at 3, and set that aside. You guys all run and jump in your cars. On the way there, if you have a power that affects yourself, would you like to use something?
Nope.
Don't have anything specific to fire off? Okay, that's fine. You jump in your car. We'll call them the bad guys just for simplicity's sake. They jump in their car, and so basically, like, there's 3 people stuffed into into each of 2 sports cars. So, which is probably a 2-seater car. and you guys go blaring down the streets of Las Vegas, let's say, because that's going to be the backdrop in Covert. And my character gets the first shot. I had a 9. You have to make sure to actually, one thing we should make sure to do is keep, when you discard that card, actually discard it into like its own pile. Mm-hmm. So you can keep track of, make sure you don't lose track of what your target score is. So mine is a 9 for my driving check. And I need to get my driver up because I didn't print anything out because I'm a stupid head. Let me get a driver card.
I didn't print out anything either.
I'm doing everything on screens. I'm about to start doing Twitch stuff a little bit more and everything, so I'm going to be getting a monitor so that I can put more stuff up on a screen.
Yep, that's why I love my 43-inch monitor, also known as my 4K television. Don't watch TV on it, even though I have a cable box.
I've just got two 24-inch monitors, so...
Oh, did I just screw that up? Hold on.
You're supposed to watch TV on a TV?
Some people do. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I just changed the zoom window size and I had to change it back. I was like, oh, that just effed up the Twitch feed briefly. But it looks like it's okay now. So, yeah. Just a second here. I'm working on everything on a laptop monitor.
Oh.
So I need to get that other, an additional monitor here.
It makes life so much easier.
Yeah, I just haven't gotten around to it because I got to do everything. I got to get a little bit of lighting, better lighting. I got to get a monitor. I got to get an adapter because I don't have any. I need to do everything through an HDMI because it's a laptop and blah blah blah. Anywho, my driver is going to attempt to. They're trying to catch you, so he's going to start pulling around the side, and I'm going to make a check. Well, my bid was spade, so that's a maneuver. He's going to maneuver his vehicle, so that's a driving. Oh, come on. I got to shrink my...
I am muted myself, right?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I have a train track right behind my apartment, so if a train goes by, it gets really loud. So I muted it for the train and couldn't...
Don't get worried about it, because you're about to hear trains go by me as well. So, okay, he's going to flip... and we're all on the honor system here because I don't have a roll 20 thing up on the screen or anything like that. Trying to hit a 9 with a agility conveyances check, which he's not too bad at. And he's going to do it with a queen. Boom. Queen of hearts. And that is suit damage. His vehicle is suit +1, so that's dealing 4 chase hits to you.
Okay.
As he peels his car around, cuts you off, and forces you down a cluttered alleyway. And then it's Marie's turn.
Fantastic.
And basically, you can do whatever you want. We did talk about vehicle, like shooting the driver or shooting out the tires isn't really intended to be part of this because that's, a lot of RPGs out there, if they don't give a lot of thought to chases, that's the way to solve it, right? Is just kill the driver. Whoever kills the driver first, that's boring. But you can certainly affect the driver in a lot of ways. You can do things that cause me to gain advantage or disadvantage and have to deal with other situations. So, telekinesis is actually potentially pretty handy with as far as like distractions and things. So
let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
How small is small object?
Figure the size, like no larger than the size of a shotgun.
Okay, so
something you can easily hold in 2 hands.
Okay, so a steering wheel.
You could jerk the steering wheel around, sure.
Yes, that you read my mind.
Yep.
I'm going to attempt to do that.
And it's a sports car, so the steering wheel's right out there. You can see it pretty clearly because you do need to be able to see what you're targeting.
I'm also going to use one of my boosts, and rather than just jerk it, if I succeed, I want it to kind of move back and forth to make it more difficult to drive.
Okay, so you want to get it shimmying, basically.
Correct.
What's the boost called?
It is the dance boost.
Okay, does it say, does it have an M in parentheses?
No. Okay. It just says target object dances erratically for 3 rounds.
Oh, so it'll do this for 3 rounds. Okay, so yeah, you'll F with him pretty hard for several rounds if you do this. Okay, so targeting an object as your basically when it comes to shooting objects, or targeting objects, it has to do with the size of the object and how quickly it's moving. The smaller it is, the harder it is to hit. The faster it's moving, the harder it is to hit. Now, you're in a vehicle that's moving roughly the same speed as your target vehicle, so that's not going to affect it too much, a little bit, we'll say, because you are kind of always changing speeds. But the object is relatively small, so I know what the target score is. You don't. That's the nature of the game, but you flip a queen. Now, I'm
going to succeed with consequence. I'm not going to tempt fate.
Okay, that's a queen. That's going to be a success, but it's with clubs, so it's going to be there's a complication. So we're going to say, all right, you're gonna start making his steering wheel shake and shimmy, which is going to cause him to suffer disadvantage for 3 rounds. So he's going to have a harder time. He's going to be down 1 card every time he makes a driving check. And for those 3 rounds, and you, as a complication, as you guys are peeling down that alleyway, you're both kind of always jockeying for position, and you're concentrating so hard on getting the steering wheel in your sight that your driver hits a bump, and you kind of, because you're like you're a girl basically, you're like a teenage girl, get bumped, flipped up in the air, and now you are on your back on the trunk with your knees and your calves in the seats, down where you're holding yourself, but you're like in danger of falling out of the vehicle or hurting yourself in the process.
Perfect.
And now the bad guys, the gunner, we'll call them the gunners. My non-driver.
It's team them against team us.
Team Pistol, the Pistol Twins, are going to start shooting, and they're out in front of you. You flipped backwards, so you're not a good target. But Colm is up in the seat there as well, so they're going to shoot at Colm. And that's going to be, one of them's going to miss. And good Lord, I'm just like, everything 6 and under. Awesome. So Colm, bullets are whizzing by, but nothing gets anywhere near Colm. And then it's Colm's turn.
Okay. Colm is going to try to hit one of those guys who was just shooting at him with a concussion beam, because he doesn't appreciate the fact that they're trying to shoot at him. So, and he's going to use a damage boost to try to do some more damage. Can I use more than one boost for a power check?
You can use up to 3 boosts, but they have to be different boosts. You cannot use the same boost multiple times.
So could I use like a damage boost and then a push boost?
Sure.
Okay. So that's power check versus their body. So let's see what I get. That's probably not going to do it. That's a 6 of hearts. Let's try. That's probably also not going to do it. That's a 7 of hearts. So,
would you like to stay with the 7 of hearts, or would you like to spend a moxie? For the record, this is going to be one encounter we're going to play out. There is no reason to hoard that moxie. There is no encounter coming afterwards.
See if I can get a better card.
Sure.
Queen of clubs.
Oh, there we go. And a complication.
I'll take it.
Okay. And you'll deal clubs to him with you were doing with the damage boost, yes?
That's it'll be clubs. So that's 1 plus 2. That's 3, and then push boost is if you hit push target 10 feet away from you.
Okay. Well, he gets a chance to try to hold on. We're going to say he takes that damage. We'll call him gunner number 1. And he's going to get some sort of a reaction check, because he is kind of seated in a vehicle.
Right.
So he's not just standing on open ground. So he's going to, target score for that's going to be pretty, not too bad, we'll say. And I flipped a jack. That's good. He stays in the car.
Yeah.
He gets jostled around a little bit. but doesn't get flipped out of the car.
Okay.
And then your driver goes.
Okay. Let's see. I had a 5 of clubs, so that's gonna be.
It's going to be an expertise conveyance check to exploit a weakness.
Okay, so
but you only need a 5.
Let's see. Is my driver good with? He's okay. We'll give it a try. Yeah, I will keep that 8 of hearts.
Okay. And that's going to do suit damage +1.
So that's 4 damage, and he's exploiting the weakness. So the other car's in front of them, right?
Currently, yes.
Okay. I'm going to assume that there are other cars on the road besides just them.
Well, last time I narrated it, you went down an alley, though there might be a car in the alley. Or a truck, like a delivery truck or something like that. Whatever you think is appropriate to an alley. And we got to keep in the mindset that this is the 1960s. This is a 1960s alley, not a Prohibition-era alley.
Okay.
So, yeah, there could be vehicles. There could be bikes, motorcycles. Dumpsters.
They're in front of him. Just trying to think of how he's going to exploit this weakness in an alley when they're in front of him. It'd be easier if he was behind him, but... Right.
How about you pull up right underneath them as they're hitting, like, there's a spot right behind a restaurant where they have, like, the big grease dumpster that is spilling stuff out, and so it's all slick and slippery. And you pull up right behind them and kind of bump them in the rear just as they're hitting that, and it causes them to kind of spin around, and they bounce the rear bumper off of a building, and that was a little more terrain oriented, but it's close enough. They weren't able to get grip,
right?
And you notice, like, we'll say that you notice that this car doesn't have very good tread. You actually noticed it as you were jumping in the car, when you guys were running out of the casino or wherever you were. Casino, when you were running out of the. I got to learn my '60s casinos. They're all gone now. The Flamingo. Okay, so that's that round. So we're gonna bid for the next round.
Okay.
Good Lord. Flip.
You beat me.
I threw a king, but
I got a jack of diamonds.
Okay, so you're going to go last. Fill your hand back up to 3. But I need a king. Yikes.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard check.
Yeah, I know. Especially given what I know is in my hand. That's another killer. If you suddenly have all high cards in your hand.
Yeah.
There might be a way to. Well, I don't. There's the possibility. Let's keep this in mind. The possibility of using cards in your hand for your check.
Okay.
Maybe by spending Moxie or something. Because it should cost you something to get those. Like if you got a lot of high cards in your hand, you're being forced to bid high, and there's less high cards in your deck to make the check.
Yeah.
Well, it's like recalling a card that you already have the ability.
Might be similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Use Moxie for.
I'm going to make a note here.
That's what's kind of interesting about this game, is it's very much becomes a card counting game, where it's not just dice rolling, which I kind of like.
Well, it was weird because when I started designing it, I found myself thinking, there's going to be people that are going to be like, they're not terribly good at counting cards, or they feel they'll go into the game feeling like other people are better and therefore have some sort of advantage over them. And then I got it into playtest, and I had multiple playtest groups coming back to me saying like the card counting thing is a feature, not a bug. Like they loved it. They loved the idea. Even if you're, because you can always flip. I told people, it's like you could just look through your discard if you want to see what your deck looks like. Your unused deck. I just let people freely look through the discard. Oh man, there's a lot of high cards in here. And they know that their deck is stacked with a lot of low cards right now.
I probably need to do something to not be on the trunk of the car anymore.
Yeah, probably.
Here's the issue. I'm not a very strong character.
Well, first thing I got to try to do is make my stinking check. And this
Good luck.
this is a clubs check, so it's going to be expertise conveyances, which is okay, but he's losing a card. Yeah, he's not going to do that. And then we're going to go to Marie, who's on the trunk of the car. Yeah, you probably need to get yourself out of that situation. Now, typically in CAPERS, one of the things I typically don't penalize people into using their action to get themselves out of a movement-based situation. So, really, you're just moving your body to get yourself. If you were, there might be a situation where you're like dangling off a bridge and you can do nothing but climb back up, right? But this is kind of just like you're just trying to get yourself, back down into the seat with just kind of maneuvering your body around a little bit. So it's not going to eat your action up, but if you're going to need to make a check for that movement, and if you fail that, now you're stuck back there, and like your actions are more limited because you won't be able to see your target as well.
Cool. So do you have a suggestion for what trait should be?
There goes the train, everybody. Physically, it's usually like it's going to be agility or strength oriented. So it's like, are you powering yourself back into your position, or are you doing something kind of mildly acrobatic to get yourself kind of righted?
So her head, so I just need to have a good visual of this.
Imagine you were sitting on the trunk with your feet in the seat.
Okay.
And now you lay back on the trunk. So you've got your legs are going over the seat, and they're anchoring you and keeping you from sliding off the trunk.
So while the car is moving,
yes,
she's gonna try to use her legs to kick herself back up off of the trunk.
Go for just an actual kip up.
Correct, which I'm hoping is more agility based, is my hope, as opposed to strength.
We'll call it agility acrobatics.
Well, cool. I get 2 cards. I'm not going to take the 4 of spades.
Yeah.
Well, or my alternative is 6 of diamonds, so I guess I better gamble. Get the crap out of here for something that actually matters. I will use my moxie point.
Okay.
Oops. But do subtraction correctly. Well, a 10 of hearts is going to be better than either of those two guys.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yep. And that'll kip you back up into a seated position on the vehicle. You're good to go, and now you can take your normal action.
Cool. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How many pistols are visible? Was it just one person who shot at us?
You saw 2. The driver's just driving, as far as you can tell. And then there are 2 goons in there, and they each have a pistol.
So I'm going to use my ability. I'm going to use 2 boosts. I'm going to use the twin boost, which allows me to apply... Oh shoot, this isn't going to work the way I was hoping it would. Never mind. I was hoping to use the twin boost, which allows me to do this to 2 items, but then I can't also make them fly away. So there's no point in using the twin boost when I can just make one of the guns fly away.
Okay.
So I will do this with 3 cards. I will use the movement boost, which can move target object up to 60 feet.
So you're just gonna try to wrest that gun out of his hand and fling it. In the case of getting look at what does your power for the power.
Oh,
you have an.
I have to use 2. I have to use the steel boost as well, so I can target an object held by another character. I knew there were 2.
Right, gotcha. So you're going to be down to 2 cards. Look at your the activation for the power. What does it say?
Activation. Power check versus body.
So in the case of this, what you're doing is you're actually, this is effectively a disarm check. You're not going after it's not so much about the size of the object, it's the fact that it's being held onto. So what you're actually shooting for your target score is, if you look at your traits, for example, you'll see each of your traits has a score on the playing card, and then on the poker chip above there is a defense. That's a target score to affect that score. So this guy's going to be holding on to his gun with his strength, so you're going to be targeting his strength defense.
Well, I'm going to just try card number 2. which I guess I will take another complication and that's cool.
Okay, you flip you yoink the gun out of his hand. It goes flying through the air and hits you square in the face.
I was gonna say, can I just hit you? Because...
and it does 2 points of damage to you. And now you've got an egg forming right here, and it's trickling blood right down your nose. That's your complication.
At least he doesn't have his gun.
That's true.
Yes, I do? Question mark?
No, it came out bing, and it went flying.
Oh, it just flew. Okay. Well, at least he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I could have been a dick and just had you fall back on the trunk again.
I mean, narratively, this makes it into a comedy, and it would be kind of hilarious, to be honest, but it's cool, you're in charge.
Hey, people who are in the chat, if anybody's in the chat, I'm not ignoring you, but I am running the game, so we'll at some point here engage with people when we see how this chase sequence goes. If you weren't here to hear the discussion earlier, there will be the opportunity to ask questions later and offer feedback and all kinds of stuff. Help make the game better. That's Marie, bad guy, gunners. One guy is no longer a gunner, so we'll handle him in a second. The other one's going to shoot at Colm again because his target really hasn't changed. And there's more cards that are low. Man, you guys are going to be in trouble in the second half of this fight. And then the other fella is he just got his gun taken away from him, and because this is supposed to be cool and cinematic and action-packed. And he is in the vehicle that's out in front of you. He is going to run down the trunk of the car, leap onto your car, and climb in there and try to knock one of you out of the car or do something. We'll see what happens. You got to see if he gets there first. And that's going to be like a strength athletics. It's basically a jumping check for him. And there's a jack. Thankfully, I finally hit a space card. He runs down the trunk of his the sports car that they're in, jumps up in the air, lands on the hood of you guys' car, and starts to climb over the windshield. And so he's kind of half on the front of the car and half in the car with you. So he's all three of you, the driver and your two other characters, are all right there. That's what he manages to do with his movement, and then he's going to take a swing at Marie with brass knuckles.
Oh, cool.
That's an ace.
Cool.
Of hearts.
Fantastic.
So he does, that deals 1 with brass knuckles, 2 damage. It's a boon, so 4 damage to Marie.
Ooh.
Well,
He punches, so now, and he gets her right in the egg there. So that's now it's torn, actually torn open, and it's bleeding down. There was no, I'm not, it's not in your eyes or anything like that. I'm not imposing that, but yeah, you're now the teenage girl in the sports car is got the bloodiest face of everybody, and it's Colm's turn.
Colm is none too happy that this guy has decided to jump on the car and start bloodying Marie. So he's going to try to remove this guy from the car. If I use concussion beam on him, is there a chance that I could damage the car or affect anyone else in the car?
Not unless you want to.
Okay, I do not want to.
Well, I shouldn't say that. Complication, if you get clubs, yes.
That's true.
There's a possibility.
Okay.
If you wanted to, basically the way that type of thing works for Brooke and anybody else that's listening now or later, the action is intended to be cinematic. It's not usually, very rarely is something built in where it screws you while you succeed, unless it's clubs.
Okay.
Clubs is always a botch if you fail or a complication if you succeed. And then, if you wanted to do something else as part of that concussion beam, in addition to just dealing damage, that would be part of a boon. If you succeeded with a boon, you could do some other cool thing with it as part of the success.
I forgot. Well, good thing I looked at this.
Gonna try to use concussion beam again on this guy.
And this is thug number 1 for the record. This is the guy that's already kind of beat up.
Okay. Gonna use damage boost, but no other boosts on him for right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the good Joker.
Okay, here we go.
First card drawn.
That's a hit. you treat it as if it's a hit with spades, so it's a as if it was a hit with a boon. Or you treat it as spades, so it's spades with a boon, so it's going to be like concussion 4, 5, 6 damage, right?
Yep.
That that launches his now unconscious or dead body at your option.
We'll say unconscious.
Knock him out, flings him back out of the car. He goes flying, and he's gone. And it was the good Joker. So you have another action.
Okay.
Another trade action.
Can I use concussion beam again? Or do I have to do something else?
You can use concussion beam again, but remember that you used boosts or a boost. So no matter what you do, you are down a card because of that boost you used earlier in the round.
Okay. Colm is going to use his. He's going to spend another boost to. He's going to do jump boost to. Now he's going to jump on the other car.
Okay.
Sort of mess with them a little bit.
Okay, so he's going to propel himself out of the car.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, if you you'll do that. So that's the jump boost, and you basically, because you're using the boost and it's costing you a card in the process, you jump, boom, and you're over there. There's no check involved unless there was something really weird going on. In this case, the cars are moving at roughly the same speed, so it's just jumping a distance.
Okay.
You get over there. That's part of movement. You technically have an action available.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as a note, in the powers, it'll say with the activation, some powers will say that it requires a power check, like Marie's.
Okay.
That requires specifically a power check, and a power check takes up your trade action. Sometimes it will say that it requires a trait action to use the thing, like Mimic. It takes it takes your trade action to change to change your features. And to look like someone else. And then with some powers, it's like it's not applicable. Like, if you're super strong, you're just super strong. It doesn't take up an action to do it.
Well, I know it says that normally it requires a power check versus body. So I didn't know if with the jump boost it still required a power check.
Well, this is, and I was going there, and what it comes down to is if the boosts will either simply say what it does, or it will say instead of standard effect, blah blah blah.
Okay.
If it says instead of standard effect, go back to the standard effect, look at the activation, which is what it takes to do the standard effect. If there is a power check or a trait check requirement, then that boost also requires that trait check or power check.
Okay.
If the boost just says you propel yourself 25 feet with a jump, then you just do that.
Okay, well this says instead of standard effect.
It says instead of, okay, so it is, okay.
So I'm still going to have to make a check then?
No, technically. It'll take up your trade action, we'll say. It would be there would be a more specific check if you had to, like, if you were trying to hit something that was moving considerably slower or faster than you, like if you were trying to land on something that was speeding away or something. So it did. Okay, so the boost does stay instead of standard effect. So you do use your trade action in the process, and you land over there just fine.
That's fine. That's all I wanted.
That's cool. And then it's your driver's turn.
Okay. He's got to get Jack. Ace of diamonds. I succeed.
Okay.
On my drive check.
Ace of diamonds. That's your drive check. And you were doing what?
Let's see.
Give me a little narrative of what you're doing, and then the diamonds is doing what? 2 plus 1, 3 damage.
So that's going to be taunting the other driver.
Okay, so yeah, you just.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries.
What are you, some sort of geek?
He probably would have been like, "Hey, buddy, it looks like you might want to turn around and pick up your friend back there."
And he gets all flustered and looks behind him, and then when he turns back, as you're saying that, Colm lands next to him, and he's flustered, and that eats up some of the chase hits. And then we go to the next round, and we have to bid again. Jeez, what do I do? Flip. Queen and queen.
Matched. Although you've got the higher suit.
Yes, but when it's players versus NPCs, players always go first.
Okay.
You'll see that in the game when it's described for initiative in the game. Players always go before the NPCs. And when if two players tie, they can just decide amongst themselves, or you can default to the suit if you really want to. But I usually prefer to let the players decide. Like, well, who do you want to go first? Like, what's most interesting for you guys? Okay. So this is going to be Chris, who's first this time. And that's our third. We're in our third round. I'm keeping track of how many rounds this is and how long it takes to finish the chase.
Okay. So my driver goes first then?
Yep.
Okay. My driver is going to spend a moxie, so he doesn't have to use diamonds. Instead, he is going to choose to go with agility conveyance. So that way he'll have as many, hopefully, chances as possible to get a good card.
Hold on 1 second. Let me see something.
Oh, okay.
No, it's okay. You do not spend a moxie to do that, to switch.
Okay.
You lose a card count.
Oh, you lose a card, okay.
I wanted to double check and make sure that I didn't make it moxie oriented, because I always have to be a little careful about making sure that I don't make too many things moxie dependent.
Okay.
That's a card count dump.
Card, okay. So, first card's a nope. Second card's a nope. Third card, 5 of diamonds. So he does not succeed at the check.
Okay, and then it's going to be Marie's turn. So we're still, the chase continues on, onto another street or whatever. But your adversaries are still technically in front of you, so they're keeping pace with you. Like you keep in mind too that Chris, should you be successful with some of these checks, you can pull a hairpin turn and force them to turn around and catch up to you, and all those sorts of things too. But technically, you're trying to get away from them, but they're in front of you. Mm-hmm. But I can always like as part of my narrative, have them drop behind you. It's really kind of immaterial. It's all for show.
So, question. Since the first power, or the first time I used my puppeteer power, I did the dance boost, which is 3 rounds. Is it round number 4 you don't have a disadvantage? Or is it this round?
For 3, it goes for 3 rounds, like from your turn to your turn. So
is this round 2? Or?
This is round 2 of him being at disadvantage.
Oh, well then, never mind. I don't need to mess around with the steering wheel anymore. I'm not feeling so hot.
For the record, too, now that you're starting to take some damage, you can spend Moxie to prevent damage.
Yep, I looked at that afterwards.
Okay.
But I wanted it to be like a dramatic, like she wipes the blood off of her face and just keeps going kind of thing.
I got you. I'll shoot you soon.
Oh, thanks, bud.
I'll make sure that you have to spend some Moxie.
Not with all those well, I guess it depends on who's driving. I'm gonna go. I will use the steel boost. And I'm feeling reckless, and I'm gonna try to fling the other gun out of the guy's hand.
Okay.
Okay, nice.
I know what your target score is. It's going to be the same as it was last time.
Cool. So I'm down 2 cards, because I'm also going to just have to use the movement boost. Oh, I'll take Jack of Spades.
Nice.
That gets it. It fires it out of there. This actually does this time it's with the spades instead of the clubs, so it's a boon rather than a complication. Your boon, you can decide, the easiest thing with the disarm with a boon is you can decide exactly where that gun lands. It could land in your lap.
I kind of like the idea of it just flinging into my lap, or floating gently as to not hurt myself down into my lap.
Okay, so you yoink the gun with telekinesis. It comes flying back at you really fast, right toward your face, where it's going to hit you right in the bloody spot again, and then it stops, and then it just settles down into your lap. And now you've got his gun. He's not looking too happy.
Try and shoot me now.
He's going to oblige you because he reaches down below, and Colm sees this, reaches down into the floorboard in front where they didn't want to draw too much attention, but things are getting out of hand, and he pulls a Tommy gun, or in this case we're in the 60s, so a machine gun basically, and levels that at Well, it's not exactly... Colm's in the car with him, but I'm just going to go after you, Marie, because it's more fun.
The poor little teenager.
Because you desperately want to spend Moxie on damage prevention.
Yep. Dramatically. Narrative.
He's going to shoot. And I'm going to get a 10 of spades.
That
10's
does it.
10's going to hit your body. Spades is going to be 6 damage. Actually, it's going to be 8.
Oh,
Total.
how much can I reduce it? Because I only have 6 hits left.
You can spend as many Moxie as you want. Each Moxie allows you to flip a card. If you flip red, you reduce 2 points. If you flip black, you reduce 4 points.
Well, we're going to start with 1. And I just flipped black. So I will take, in a dramatic fit of wiping the blood off of her face, she just probably screams out in pain and then just laughs. Because she has Moxie.
Of course she does. So that was the gunner, because the other one's gone, right? Yeah. He's gone. And then it's going to be Colm's turn. Colm is in the car with the machine gun guy and the driver.
Colm sees the gunner start shooting.
And for the record, I'm going to throw this out there. Right now, it's a narrative-only kind of thing, but it could potentially worsen. His hands are dancing on the steering wheel, which is causing the entire car to shimmy and shake, which Colm is dealing with by standing in the car right now.
Okay.
No mechanical effect yet.
All right. He yells, "You rat bastard!" Is gonna concussion beam the gunner.
Straight down into the seat. Pow.
Straight down into the seat. He's going to try to bounce him. He's going to use the push boost to try to knock him up. So let's see. 6. So he's got 3 cards, 6 of diamonds, and 5 of spades. 8 of diamonds? Is that going to be enough to hit him?
I don't know. Do you want to spend a Moxie or stick with that?
I know 8 of diamonds is going to be close, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough.
For the people who know the game a little bit, an 8 is the bare minimum to hit somebody that has a 1 agility and no powers that boost their defense. Anything below an 8 doesn't hit a person, period, unless there's like really extenuating circumstances.
You know what? Colm's going to spend a Moxie because I don't... Okay, 9 of diamonds.
9 will hit him.
All right, awesome.
And diamonds, concussion beam. Did you do a boost?
He did the push boost.
The push. So you got diamonds is 2, and you went to push him.
Yep. Either up and out of the car or just...
Sure. Well, I kind of always imagine Colm as like when he's shooting his concussion beams, he's going through boxing motions as he's doing.
Yeah.
And so he comes with this uppercut underneath this guy's jaw, and then pa-pa, before he connects to the jaw, he's a foot away. Concussion beam flies out. He's going to get a reaction check to keep himself from getting kind of tossed up in the air, and he's going to make that with an ace.
Yeah.
Now you've managed to get him. You got his attention.
Well, that's good.
That helps. And then it's my driver's turn. He's still suffering.
At least we can get the attention off of Marie.
He's attempting to maneuver his car. Now he's gonna get his car back around. As he's driving, he's gonna try to get behind you because he's tired of kind of getting bumped from behind. And he's gonna make a check against a queen, and he's down a card.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, and he's not going to do that, and then we're back at the top of the order, and it's bid time again. Son of a bitch. Flip.
4.
8.
You go first.
He's going to attempt, that's a spade, so that's a driving check again. I'm going to make my check. This is his last round of dealing with the dancing steering wheel.
For now.
Ace of clubs, I'm going to take it. That's Ace of clubs is one of my favorite cards to flip. It's an ace, so it's always successful, and it's an ace, so it's a boon. But it's a club, so it's a complication too.
That's always fun.
Yeah, so that's going to deal 1 + 2 for the thing. You're going to take 3 chase hits damage. 4, sorry.
Okay. 4? Okay.
Because there's a boon. So it's suit +1 + 2 for the boon. So 4, and he's going to suffer a complication. Feel free to throw an ID out there if you have one.
Could it be he has one more turn of, or I guess it doesn't necessarily...
Well, I mean, imposing disadvantage on somebody the next turn is always a good fallback for a complication. It's a generic kind of thing where something happens that they're so yeah, I mean, that's been serving you well thus far. We'll say that he's going to have disadvantage one more round, even though your power is going to run out. Your 3 rounds is going to run out. So then it's Marie's turn. So this frees Marie up to do something else. That's the point.
Yeah. Well, here's her thought process, or my thought process as her. She flings both the pistols away, then the guy jumps on the car. Luckily, and then slugs her in the face. But then Colm takes care of him, and he goes flying off of the car. He does it to the other pistol, and then gets shot by a machine gun. So she's not having a real great time.
It's been a bad day so far.
Yeah, I mean, she's still alive. Thank God for Moxie.
Well, she's got a gun.
That is true.
Jamie.
Shooting the said gun.
Agility guns.
Which is only two cards. Melee. Would it be melee to throw said knife at them?
That would be strength thrown or strength.
So it would be melee if I was stabbing them with it.
Strength thrown weapon. Thrown weapon is a separate skill.
That's not helpful.
Or sorry, ranged weapon. It's a ranged weapon.
Ranged
weapons are like anything archaic, anything that's not guns. So agility ranged weapons does things like bows and throwing a dagger, like things that are designed to be thrown. And then other stuff that's more about just like hitting somebody with something heavy, like flinging a gun in somebody's face.
I'm gonna shoot.
Is strength.
I'm gonna add insult to injury to this guy that I stole his weapon and I'm going to attempt to shoot him. So I get 2 cards because I don't have the shoot skill.
Okay. Hey, 2 cards is not bad. The game system is actually kind of designed to be like 3 cards is kind of where you want to... That's kind of the sweet spot of where you want to be. More cards than that, that's where you start spending boosts. Because 3 cards is often pretty good. So
okay,
what do you got
Mom,
for 2?
A new pair of shoes. You know what? I'll take my success with a complication. Fling me back onto the hood of the card. Let's do this.
Okay.
Or whatever else you want to do.
That's a club with a gun is suit plus. Okay, so that's going to actually kill or knock him out at your choice. He was. These guys are regulars. They're in the game. They're what's referred to as regulars. They don't have a lot of hits. They're not powered characters.
I think she's seeing red, no pun intended, and she's shooting to kill.
Okay, so you plunk him.
Probably surprised by the fact that she actually hits him somewhere that makes it really hurt.
You plunk him, and the way I'm going to do this, I think, is you've effectively, because at this point the chase turns into like grinding down the driver because he can't do much more than drive, unless he's going to spend Moxie to get extra actions, and you can only do so much of that. So this would be one of those things where, like, he doesn't have any backup if he's chasing you. He's just seen 2 of his buddies go, so he would actually probably just pull out of the chase. He would let you go. He would save his own skin.
Colm's still in the car with him.
Well, Colm will, he'll start slowing down, and then what does Colm do?
if the goal is, I guess, is to get away from them, Colm would probably use his powers to jump back into the other car.
Sure. So that's kind of what I figured.
Okay.
That's fine, because the chases don't all necessarily have to end with getting through all of your chase hits, and I'm also trying to gauge like how many hits is appropriate to have. So Colm, concussion beams to the ground, shoots himself back up into the air, probably damages the car a little bit in the process, lands in the car, and the group of you speed away. I'm curious. Now, at this point, basically, the scenario is over. You want to see what I had in my hand?
Yee.
I had all 3 of my kings and 2 of my aces show up in my hand.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah,
that makes it really
difficult.
hard to beat the king.
Just for reference for Marie, we had like 12 hits left on our sports car.
That power seems really OP in a situation like
we
this.
were getting hammered. They probably, if they had focused on the car instead of us, they probably actually could have taken our car out.
But that's what it's trying to avoid.
Right. You mean to say that if the gunner characters had shot at the car.
Right.
Right.
Well, here's what would have happened. They would have all done 3 less damage on every shot that they made.
Oh, okay.
So even if they flip a spade with a pistol, shoot +1, they're only going to do 2 points.
Okay.
Normally 5 goes down to 2, which means also that 3-point reduction means that all of your little color and color +1 weapons, like you can't slow a car down with a knife.
Right.
You just can't.
Which is realistic.
If they had been shooting at the car and had hit all the time, and it had gone on for like another couple of rounds, I think they might have stopped you. Because you managed to only deal 7 of the 22 hits that they had, because you only hit them twice. But that's one of the things I'm trying to zero in on. It's just going to take a number of times playing it to see, how many hits is correct. Like how long do I want a chase sequence to be? And it's going to be one of those things it's going to vary too, like how many vehicles there are. If there's 2 vehicles chasing you, they're probably going to catch you unless they've got particularly slow vehicles. And
I think the thing too,
got to try to figure all that out.
Is some of this can be like, GM, well, you're chasing you're being chased, and they decide they've followed you far enough and they know where to find you if you stay here, long enough, and they tear off.
Or you take out enough of the people that are with the driver, and the driver decides, what am I going to do if I catch them? It's going to be 3-on-1. I'm going to get out of here. So there's a lot of different ways that the chase can end. It doesn't have to end with one of the vehicles hitting zero.
But I
hits.
like it that it's more of a narrative action based type of rule set you were trying to do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, like Dungeons and Dragons, doesn't have a good, for example, because that's where a lot of my tabletop experience comes, doesn't have a good way of dealing with a chase. It's like a dexterity check, depending on, pretty much just dexterity, because that's the agility-based skill. Where I appreciate the fact that you're trying to make it more than driver expertise in conveyances over and over again.
Yeah.
And make it more of what you would see in an action film.
And that's something that I found in general, is that unless the chase is kind of built into the genre, like it's a trope of the genre,
right,
the RPG usually doesn't have chase rules, and if they do, it's usually just a very slight modification on the standard skill check or attribute check kind of stuff, and it falls to, it doesn't evoke anything cinematic. It doesn't. It tends to, like we talked about earlier, about it just becomes kill the driver or shoot the tire out. It doesn't. Like the core idea of the bidding. Now, I did it with cards, and this other game did a different. There was a bidding mechanic, but it was different because it was dice and there was no cards. This is actually built, like the idea of the bid for the drivers came from the the way back 30 years ago original James Bond RPG.
Okay.
Which had a specific rule set that had bids and allowed you to go at different times and gamble on different things happening at certain times. And it's one of, I looked at maybe a half a dozen, maybe not even that, 4 or 5 game systems that have solid chase rules, because it's just not one of those rule sets that gets done a lot,
Yeah.
People a lot of times just default to, you make a bunch of, like D&D 4th edition, and they kind of do it a little bit in 5th edition too. Like D&D 4th edition tried to solve the extended skill check thing with the skill challenge mechanics, where you would have to make a certain number of successful checks, and you could apply narrative to all of that. But it was like, it only half did what they wanted it to do. It was like they didn't give thought to, like, does this need to have a slightly different mechanic? They just said, we'll just take the skill check thing, and we'll just, say you need to have a certain number of successes before you hit a certain number of failures. When they could have done something so much more interesting.
Yeah, it's tough. I think the problem with like Dungeons and Dragons is that it's supposed to be a combat focused game, and it's not built to tell narrative stories. Where I think like Capers and some other games are designed to tell more narrative stories, and therefore have a place or have a better way of making it a narrative. I don't know.
I think part of the problem with Dungeons and Dragons 2 is it relies so much on the dice rolls. There's like, if you screw up a dice roll, that's kind of it. Like you don't have any option where, well, I can spend a resource to try and do it again, or my first roll was bad. Well, I've got 2 more rolls, so maybe I'll do better with those. You're pretty much just stuck with whatever luck ends up deciding to hand out in terms of your roll.
Yeah, and as you played the game, when you're playing the game, you're rolling a d20, and so any game that uses a high die, that's awful swingy. It's like you can roll a 2 or a 19. That's a really big difference.
Yeah.
And every RPG system tries to emulate something. Some succeed more than others. And like D&D's kind of what D&D tries to do, just a sidetrack off of Capers a little bit.
Sorry.
That's okay. What D&D tries to do, and Pathfinder, with the D20 system, is to say, okay, at low levels, your character is much more subjected to the whims of fate, and the whims and the chance of the randomness of the die. So you're going to roll a D20 and you're going to add a +2 or a +3. But then by the time you get to very high levels, your bonuses that you're adding on top of that D20 are much, much higher. So the bonus means more than the die roll later on. And that was nowhere was that more evident than in 4th edition, where by the time you got to be 25th, 30th level characters, you had bonuses that were like +22.
I didn't care for 4th edition.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that like the idea that it's emulating is that like when you're playing this adventure that's starting off, like you could die at any moment because you're just a little toady, nothing. Like there's this whole dangerous world around you, and by the time you hit 18th level, you are a freaking god, and you've got all these bonuses, and so the D20 roll isn't as important because you have earned that power.
Yeah, Pathfinder's a lot like that.
Pathfinder's the higher the bonuses are, the more that is. The more that is true.
Yeah, and I think that's what's cool about Capers. That the different suits mean different things, and that you do a good job. Like, there isn't as much variance. Like, a player who's seasoned in playing Capers knows, for the most part, if you're attacking another player, like you said, 8 is the bare minimum. If you can get higher than that, great. So that means, technically speaking, like half of the cards are good then.
Yeah.
Or maybe not quite
and
half.
the weird thing with the chase rules then, the way it's designed right now, because we're just talking about that, is that it actually makes those low cards more useful too. Like low cards actually become useful. Like if you can bid a 5 and just say I'm going to suck it and go last, you're almost certainly going to deal the damage.
Yeah.
So so it's just a question of like it's and like it is with the mechanic in general, it becomes a question of how, like the individual players. Some people are very conservative, some people are very aggressive. So I'm just I think that one of the biggest things I need to figure out here is like none of us attempted a stunt. And I was thinking about that like halfway through the combat. It's like I should do a stunt next time, but I kept in these high numbers, and I was like, I'm not going to hit a king or an ace if I handicap myself by dropping even more cards, because I'm already down one, and I might need to bring the stunt. One of the things I'll have to look at is like this the penalty. The penalty for the stunt is right now to drop 2 cards from your card count. It might need to be just 1 because there's too many other ways to get your card count dropped, and then the hits. How much hits deal, or how many hits the different vehicles have is going to be probably.
Can I ask
that'll be the thing that I'll hone in on, like because how many hits you have really just if you don't change how your damage works, how many hits you have determines how long the action sequence is, and that's really what it's all about. Is like how long is this chase? That's the big thing. It's like how long is this chase sequence going to be? Is it going to take an hour and 20 minutes to play, or can I do it in 30, 40 minutes? Less hits, faster.
Have you considered statting cars out like the actual CAPERS? Or is this something you're trying to avoid?
I was trying, like the whole thing where you give them like actual trait scores and all that.
Right, so like Shadowrun, every single vehicle has a body score and and like armor and some other stats along those lines, for example.
I considered that stuff, and I may still try that out. The biggest thing is that to me, for the game, the character is the important part. And if I stat out a car to be as complex as a character, not that CAPERS characters are terribly complex, but if I make the car as complex as a character, now I'm implying to the reader that the car is equally important or very close.
Okay.
And that's maybe a little more, like I want the car to be, excuse the phrase, a vehicle to the fun of having your characters do fun, cool stuff. So I'm leaning toward just the idea of like, how do you keep the vehicles moving, and how do you get them out of the chase, rather than giving them a lot of scores.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm also dealing with this is 60s style James Bond kind of stuff. So I'm dealing with gadgets, and there's going to be vehicle gadgets, and one of them is almost certainly going to be certainly be armor, and that's probably just going to increase your car's hits. It'll increase, like I don't have to use it to increase a body score. I can use it to adjust other things.
Maneuverability.
It can affect your maneuver. It can affect the damage that you deal. It can affect your hits. However I balance.
And
that
then my only other concern, that power, and maybe I just pulled cards really well, and I don't think I failed a single one of my power. I don't think I failed a single pull the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, now that I think about it, and maybe that was just incredible luck on my part. But that power seemed really overpowered. If the first thing I could do was mess around with the steering wheel, use a boost, and be like, you don't get to drive your car very well now.
One thing is the game's published, so that's not changing. So I just have to accommodate that. And yeah, that is one of the things. Like if you can impose.
And maybe it's just my unfamiliarity with the system.
Yeah, if you can impose disadvantage on a character on a continuous basis, that's pretty significant. But it's also not taking them out of the fight.
Also, keep in mind we were fighting just regulars. We weren't even fighting other people who were CAPERS like us. So if we had been, things might have gone differently. Because they could have possibly used powers to counter your powers, or use powers to find ways to disable our vehicle.
Yeah,
these to be fair, I was at 2 hits.
These two thugs had 4 hits.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you guys have at least 12.
Yeah, these were just mooks basically.
So it's something to keep in mind that.
So it wasn't necessarily a fair fight, is what you're telling me.
No, it wasn't supposed to be. And here's the dirty little secret for you guys who are on here, and anybody who happens to listen to this down the road. CAPERS skews pretty noticeably toward success. The game system just skews towards success. I've got actual numbers. I had a math guy do the actual stats, and the game skews towards success, and it's supposed to. I want it to. This is not a game about characters failing or having to overcome, fail, and finally overcoming. This is a game about characters doing cool stuff all the time. So it does skew towards success, which also means that it skews toward, if you use equally powered NPCs, it skews toward their success as well. So it makes things extra tough for you, because when you do run up against capers that are of the same level as you, they're going to be hitting you as often as you're hitting them, within a certain bound of accuracy. But yeah,
I mean, I would love to play more capers, I think. Unfortunately, I work dumb hours.
Hold on just a moment.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
Unfortunately, I work stupid hours.
Yeah, well, it happens. So yeah, I think that I'll have to I'm gonna have to run it a few several times and get kind of see what the right number of hits is. See what happens when people start using stunts a lot. See what happens if you've got like a caper character or an exceptional character driving the car. Like the person driving this car was a pretty basic character. They didn't have terribly high stats. Like you could build a character that is just an ace with driving a car, and you're gonna you could use the puppeteer power to get them to shake, to get the steering wheel shaking and all that kind of stuff. But you're dealing with somebody who's flipping 5 cards, so you just took him from 5 cards to 4 cards. Big deal. That's not going to really affect him significantly. He's still going to have 4 cards to flip.
Right, because you said
you were taking me from 2 or 3 cards down to 1 or 2 cards, depending on what check I was making. So it also kind of depends on on who you're up against. And I kept this one simple by just having it be kind of like basic characters.
I think it has
no powers or anything.
Real opportunity to be a whole lot of fun. Because, like you said, it isn't a mechanic that is usually thought about. Or isn't thought about heavily if the rules exist in a game set.
And it's not intended to be necessarily something that you're going to have a chase sequence in every adventure, every game session that you're running. Especially if the chase sequences tend to take a little longer, which I think they will just inherently, unless the hits come down closer to what character hits are. Even if I reduce the hits on the vehicles significantly, there's already the inherent slowdown of having to do the bid at the beginning of each round, so that slows things down just a touch.
Right. That's one of the things that I like.
And how many hits there are, that's going to depend. That's going to determine that too. I got to figure out. I personally can run a combat. I can run 5 players against 5 caper or exceptional NPCs. And if the players know that they know the system, like when I was running my playtest campaign, we ran that in a half an hour. 5-on-5 powerful characters, the combat was done in a half an hour.
Well, and that's what I was going to say.
That's rocking. That's quick for that
is
powerful.
Really fast.
So I mean, even if a chase sequence ends up being like a 40 to 45 minute thing that you do once every 4 sessions or something, that's kind of a cool special thing that you throw in there. Maybe that's what it's intended to be.
Or at a climax in the story. Or...
Yeah, you have a campaign and you have 3 big chase sequences over the course of the campaign. And you let those really big knockdown, blowout things with multiple drivers and multiple cars on both sides. And if somebody wants to run, and then the group that's playing it, they'll do it the way they want to do it. If they really love the chase mechanics and they just want to do a chase sequence every session, they'll do it. I can't stop them. I don't want to stop them. If that's what they enjoy, go for it. So I'm trying to think. It's hits, maneuver, the stunts thing. I got to get people making sure to do stunts. See how that affects things. Potentially using cards in your hand for checks. That's going to be really useful because you can get crippled. I mean, I got crippled very quickly. I still managed to do decent damage because I think I got a big boon one time. But I was pulling kings and aces into my hand like crazy. And if you just happen to have one of those days where you just pull a lot of kings and aces into your hand, that'll cripple your driving checks, which will extend the fight, extend the sequence.
Well, and that's unfortunately how it is with any combat.
Yeah.
You don't roll well, you don't pull cards well, you don't XYZ well, things that a DM or GM thought would take 15 minutes now takes a half an hour because nobody can hit anybody.
Yeah. The downside to having the hand is that you, as the player, you're crippled. So it's also a psychological thing where it makes everything feel like it's just not as much fun. Potentially, for some people, they'll look at it and be like, "Oh, this sucks," and they're just going to sit there and I'll just slog through this until I can get some better cards in my hand and hope that happens. So for 3 or 4 rounds, they're just kind of like, bah. And they're maybe not having as much fun as they could because they know they're kind of stuck. Or maybe spend a moxie to redraw your driver hand.
But then those cards get discarded, or do they get put on the bottom of the deck, shuffled back in?
I think they get discarded.
Would you have really wanted to discard your 2 kings and the ace of spades?
From my hand, absolutely. They're not. I'm not going to flip them. I'm not going to get them on a check.
Oh,
because I can't play them out of my hand.
Yeah, you get to go first, but you have a very low chance of actually succeeding on the check.
So getting all those cards out of my hand, spending a moxie to dump all of them and get all new cards into my hand, and now I draw again. Here's a jack, and here's an 8, and here's a 4. Okay, now that's something I can work with, and it costs me a moxie to do. I think that's better than using moxie to spend to play a card out of your hand.
Yeah,
I think that's a better solution. Is you can just it's similar to the reshuffle. It kind of it helps. It resets you.
Well, and that was what I was gonna mention.
And if you really want to get those, if you discard all those kings and aces out of your hand for a moxie, and you really want to get those back into your deck, you can by spending another moxie. So it's pricey, it's expensive to do, but it refreshes your drive hands. So your drive hands in much better shape, with more variation, hopefully. And it gets all those good cards back into your deck.
I appreciate, as an outsider not having played the driver, that low cards don't necessarily... The negative of a low card is outweighed by then more likely than not being able to succeed your check. Yeah.
And that was one of the things I had discussions with people when I was designing the system in the first place, particularly with my friend Dave, who he's a board and card game designer, and he likes to see, like, no matter what you do, you get something out of it. And so with RPGs, there is a tendency there are just failures, right? You do something that fails.
Yeah.
There's been a movement within the indie RPG side of things where you see more of the fail forward stuff where you do something, things go poorly, but you gain like a little something. And I had some of that in there with the motivation mechanic and stuff like that. But
yeah.
But they're still just straight up failures. So when I was looking at all of this, I was like, I recognized that like you can bid that low card. And that means you're going last, and that sucks a little bit, but only for this round. And you're probably going to make your check.
Yep.
So
that's what Powered by the Apocalypse does really well. You have the number you roll that is automatically a fail, and then you get like some of the information or the ability to do some of what you were seeking, and then you've got the awesome successes.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason I like the Powered by the Apocalypse system games so much, is there's much more of getting at least a little bit of what you wanted.
Yep. And that's inherent to investigation rules for some of the games that have come out lately that are heavy on investigation. And you're going to see that in Capers Noir. It's like even on a failure, you get the clue. You just don't get a lot of extra information because the investigation needs to move forward. There's nothing worse than in an investigation that you make a check and the GM says, okay, well, you don't find the clue. Now what?
Yeah, because then you're stuck.
Yeah, now we just hit a wall.
The story goes nowhere.
That sucks. Like in the investigation rules for Capers Noir, you get the clue no matter what. But if you fail on the check, all you get is the clue, and you have to figure stuff out.
Right.
But you have something to work with. There's my train. And if you succeed and you get boons and stuff like that, then you get to ask questions about the clue and get additional information. And
I'm gonna have to pick up Capers when I have a little bit of money, which isn't at the moment. Because I'm looking for a game to run in the spring.
Well, if you're a PDF person, it's $10 right now. That's as cheap as it's ever going to be.
Ooh, I might
until
have
the
to.
end of the year. I've got it on sale on drive-thru. Just
Unfortunately, I get paid on the 3rd again.
no. So let me think. Anything else that's worth? We're starting to get close to the end point here. Chris, any thoughts? You're a little more familiar with the game in general. Did anything? Here's a question I always like to ask. Did anything get in the way of the fun? Did anything seem to be hampering the process?
No, I wouldn't say so. Probably for stunt, I feel like maybe reduce card count by 1 instead of 2.
Yeah,
possibly. Although I don't know. It's one of those things where how much is it dealing additional chase damage equal to your vehicle's maneuver rank?
and it's not as good for bigger, uglier vehicles because their
Yeah.
maneuver is lower, but their inherent damage is higher. So it's
Right.
primarily the stunts are primarily there to benefit the smaller vehicles that don't do as much damage, which is probably what characters are going to be driving most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't expect to see too many semi on semi chases. But yeah, I think that's probably when you think about you could be dropping a card to use a boost for something to get some little funky power, and you could be dropping a card because you're being affected with disadvantage. Like having two more dropped cards for the stunt is an awful lot. Like it'd be better, and not that you're going to be having all those reductions at the same time, but that's an awful lot. Yeah, I think that probably should just go back to -1 card, and we'll see how it plays. And I just got to keep it in mind because it's like the stunt thing is like one of those things that it's like the little added on thing to the rest of the system. Mm-hmm. Just like people who aren't used to dealing with a pool of points will forget that they have Moxie.
Yeah.
People who are running the vehicle thing for the first time will be like, "Oh, it's all in the bid. That's where all the fun is. All the chase rules are in the bid. That's where it all happens."
Right.
And then you got to be like, "Oh, no! But there's also this thing where you can bump your damage with a stunt. You just have to remember it." And I even, I succumbed to that. I thought about it after the second round. I was like, I should do a stunt next time, and then that was the last time I thought about it. I should put up a big sign right here.
But
Don't forget stunts.
Like you said, I got you pretty much disadvantaged from the beginning of the chase.
Yeah.
And had there been more people and had it gone a little bit longer, it maybe wouldn't have mattered. But it was...
Well, I mean, it still mattered. I mean, he had less of a chance to potentially draw a good card on every draw. Right. I mean, that's pretty significant.
I'm saying in this case, but if the chase had gone longer, if we hadn't been able to incapacitate the people that the driver was with in such a handy fashion, mostly by you, because I was just annoying the heck out of everybody, things would have been different. Or if I would have not flipped cards so well and failed on my power checks.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one power and one specific boost that you happen to have that worked out nicely in there. Like, there aren't a lot of powers that just allow you to slap disadvantage on people.
I'm curious as how a power like Force Field or something would affect the chase.
It's not going to move very fast is the problem.
Well, you can you can boost it to where you can drop the Force Field and make it like away from you. Like if you just drop it in front of one of the vehicles, how is that going to affect?
Well, and it's that's the issue with my personal philosophy in game design for me is I'm not going to write the rule for every situation. Like,
right.
The GM has to make okay, you dropped a force field in front of the car. That should be really cool. But it's not going to be. I'm never going to just say like, oh, you did this one thing and now the chase is over. It's never going to be this force field drops in front of the car, and the guy hits rams the car into the force field and smashes it up, and they all die. And that's
especially when you consider the entire point of this system is you're not like an X-Men.
Yeah. So what would I do? What would I do? It'd be like you could have it be. There's a few different ways you could go with it. It's like
I'd probably have it slow the other car down.
The other car gets slowed down. The other car, the driver has to swerve around it, and they have to, then they have to recover their vehicle, recover good control of the vehicle. So they might affect them with disadvantage for the next round. At the most, maybe they slam into it, and I just flip and do, color damage or suit damage, or I do color damage to the vehicle, or color +1 or something like that, as the car smashes through and destroys the force field, because it is not a force field, like you said, they're not X-Men. It's not necessarily a force field that's going to withstand a nuclear blast,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool stuff that could happen. And then it's just one of those things when you're playing it, it's just like for your group, decide, okay, this is what happens when you put a force field into a firefight or into a chase scene, and then just be consistent.
Yeah.
And then if the players start to use it all the time and they're constantly getting great effect out of it, then the GM says, okay, and here comes bad guy force field guy. And he's going to F your car up constantly.
I think that is the whole homebrew, or I am the GM and this is how this is going to work, even though it may not be explicitly said in the rules, it's nice to not have it. I had a player who was very much a rules lawyer, and what I didn't tell him was, I'm in charge here. If you don't like it, you can go play with someone else, and probably should have, but this game has dissolved since then, where you leave it flexible for the GM to be able to say, this doesn't work the way you expect it, or if you do this and succeed, this is what's going to happen, and be able to give the players a heads up based on whatever the GM wants.
Okay, well,
anyway.
I think that was a successful, informative test. Thank you both for helping out.
Thank you for having us.
I appreciate it. I don't think anybody's in the chat. We have one person, they popped away, so we don't have to discuss anything with anybody there. Hey, anybody who's listening to this after the fact, if you want to give feedback, you're too late. Although, if you got something that you feel is absolutely needs to be mentioned, you can always go and email me at nerdburgergames@gmail.com, because you may say, hey, these guys missed out on this critical thing. That's entirely possible, because I do it.
Or mention it in the Discord.
Or throw it up in the Discord, in the CAPERS, in the CAPERS channel. So, thank you guys. I think we wrap it up here, unless you have anything else you want to...
Nope.
All right, Brooke, Chris, thank you so much.
No problem.
We're gonna sign off here. Everybody, take a look, check it out. Hope you enjoyed. You're listening to a glimpse of something that will very, very hopefully go into the second supplement for CAPERS if the first supplement does well. So here's hoping.
Woo woo.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.